Welcome back to more Warhammer lore. In today's video we will be delving back into the Skaven. This time we will be following a particular legendary lord, if I do say so myself, and the legendary lord known as Queek Headtaker. Queek, like many Skaven before him, was born into this world within the many breeding pits owned by his clan. Queek's litter was born exceptionally large and black-furred, a sign that these Skaven should grow up to be the true killers and the storm vermin of their clan. However, Queek was by far the largest of his lot, and in time, he eventually devoured his own brothers even before he opened his eyes to fully grow out of his fur. Seeing great potential within Queek, Warlord Nodwell personally took Queek under his wing and trained him extensively to be his new protege. As such, Queek was given the finest luxury that can be afforded by a Skaven of such high status. He was given the best food, the greatest arms and armor. It was hand-reared by Nodwell personally to become the ultimate warrior, as well as a general, though Queek showed little interest in actual tactics, preferring to rely on his own strength and the fear of his minions of himself to carry the day. When Queek grew to be 4 years old, the young Skaven had arisen swiftly through the ranks and earned himself a string of victories to his name. The majority of Queek's exploits have always been in the tunnels, the layers and caves beneath the surface of the world's edge mountains. The world's fame grew exponentially as word of his deeds and conquests spread across the length of the Under Empire. Queek's personality can be associated to that of a powder keg, unpredictable and dangerous. It was said that Queek could not be bribed, he did not care for threats, and that he leads his army fearlessly from the front. Queek is an unnaturally fearless and bloodthirsty Skaven, with an over-flattered ego to match. Queek considers himself the greatest warlord to literally ever have lived, as any self-respecting Skaven should. However, unlike many other Skaven warlords before him, Queek has been known to back up these claims as willingly as he is to boast about them, as shown with the many heads that now decorate his trophy rack. Indeed, Queek has shown an unnatural interest in both finding and fighting the strongest enemies he can find. From massive black orcs to dwarf thanes and rival Skaven warlords, Queek has fought and defeated each and every one of them. Alongside his infamy as a great warrior, Queek has also earned himself a reputation for madness. This could be in part the result of his warp shard armor, but we will get into that later. He also exhibits a disturbing affection for his collection of severed heads he keeps upon his trophy rack. Those that would dare to touch his prized possessions have had their wrists cut off by Queek personally. At times, Queek has been seen talking to these heads when nobody else is looking, and at times even when they are, as if the skulls themselves still retain the souls of those he decapitated in ritual combat, giving the warlord advice on how best to destroy his enemies. Now, Queek does in fact realize that the other Skaven think him crazy, and in fact, despite this, he obviously is aware. Sometimes the heads not only give him advice, but they also tell him secret things that he should not be capable of knowing, which leads one to wonder if perhaps the Horned Rat himself is communicating with the Headtaker, or perhaps something even more nefarious. Although Queek is a magnificent warrior, the warlord hasn't been readily known for his cunning, if he has any at all. Queek is as thick as he is bloodthirsty, preferring a daring frontal assault rather than to use the wiser and more efficient means of attack. In comparison to other Skaven, Queek dislikes scheming and intrigue of any kind, which is one of the great reasons why the warlord has a great distrust of the politically minded Greyseers. Even Lord Nodwell has expressed his disappointment to Queek's rather inept intellect for things other than fighting, often remarking the warlord as a dangerous yet blunt instrument. Nevertheless, Queek's combat skill, coupled with his immense bravery and fearlessness in battle, has granted him many victories. When Queek goes to battle, he's often accompanied by a retinue of crimson-armored storm vermin, known as the Red Guard, who is led by his second-in-command, Ska Bloodtail, an unnaturally loyal and obedient Skaven that is larger than even Queek himself, which is saying something, as Queek is quite large for a Skaven. Queek's first major exploit was his victory over Morgur Blacktooth, in which the Headtaker slew the mighty Black Orc warlord in single combat, a feat no one believed a single Skaven could accomplish, and took his head as the first of his trophy rack. It was then that the head began to talk to Queek. Now, it is unknown if the warlord hears voices before this event, but the disembodied skull did not frighten the mighty Queek, and in fact, it explained to him where he could find a large tribe of goblins, former comrades of Blacktooth. The Skaven Queek was leading thought that Queek had gone mad, obviously, but they feared him even more and kept in line and obeyed his orders and set out to hunt down these obviously made-up goblin allies. To their surprise, not only did they find the goblins, but after a quick and rather one-sided battle, soundly defeated the greenskins and began pillaging the hold. Of course, Queek got the first pick of any treasure, and through Blacktooth's urging, he found the mighty Dwarf Gouger. Well, it was probably named something else in Khazad, but the Headtaker named his weapon and set out for his next conquest. The next great victory he would have had would be at the hands of other Skaven. His next great task would be to stamp out the traitorous warlord Icket Scratch of Fester Spike, whom Lord Nodwell was not pleased with. However, by now, word of Queek's insanity and tenaciousness in battle had grown, and Icket was taking no chances with his life and chose to fortify his holdings as to prevent Queek from adding his head to the trophy rack. Unfortunately for him, the trophies gave Queek an ingenious scheme to throw off the warlord. What one would call a genius of battle tactic. Queek had his army, the retinue of Skaven slaves, more precisely, dig tunnels all around Icket Scratch's forces. Of course, the warlord was prepared for this, and divided his forces so that they could cover every interest with ease, as this was in fact a very common Skaven tactic in warfare. However, instead of dividing his army to attempt a flanking attack on the entrenched enemy, Queek led an all-out frontal assault with all of his troops down a single tunnel, easily sweeping the thin defenders aside and collapsing them piecemeal as they entered combat. Of course, this also led to the head of Icket Scratch decorating Queek's growing trophy rack. Then, to many surprise, Queek, the insane rat, was promoted by Lord Nodwell to take command of the mighty City of Pillars, or Crack Eight Peaks as we know it. Here he has remained for the most part, battling the forces of Skarsnik, the Night Goblin warlord, and Belagar Ironhammer, the king of a small force of dwarfs attempting to wrest control of their hold once again. Queek would make another appearance upon the Skaven assault against the dwarfs of Karak Angul, where he was convinced by the deviously cunning Greyseer Thankwol to attack the dwarf hold while it was left undefended. Now, I won't be going into every detail of this assault, as it was quite large, and I think it favors more Thankwol's story than Queek's, but I will do my best to inform you of Queek's part in the bloodshed. Now, despite this sounding like an excellent idea to any Skaven, undefended hold, the Headtaker is not normal, and he was very upset at the prospect of slaughtering dwarf things with no opposition, and so Thankwol, being the cunning rat he is, promised Queek that he could have the head of the King of the Karak for his mighty trophy rack, and that really got Queek going, and they set out at once. Queek and his army attacked without any major opposition. In fact, the dwarfs were being attacked by another Skaven horde from below, led by another Skaven hero by the name of Icket Claw, the mad warlock engineer of Clan Scryer. Unfortunately for the dwarfs, they managed to repel this force from below with the aid of some of the Skaven politics, and were able to quickly aid the upper-level dwarfs engaged with Queek's army by commandeering one of the mighty warp grinders and tunneled straight there from below. Finally, Queek's army was blocked by a newly assembled army in the next upper deeps. At first, Queek was delighted to slaughter more dwarf things, but soon realized that his forces were slowly but surely beginning to falter. Queek, not taking failure so lightly, forced Thankwol to summon forth Vermin Lord Vectique into this plane of existence to help him with this battle. Of course, this is all part of Thankwol's story, and that it had to do with the Skaven paw he believed to be a link to the Vermin Lord, and allowed the Greyseer to wield a large amount of power and influence in the Under Empire. But once again, that is a story for another day. The ritual, however, ended in complete failure, as instead of summoning forth a Vermin Lord, Thankwol accidentally summoned the Bloodthirster Scarbrand instead, a greater demon of Khorne, one might even say the greatest demon due to his infamy. Even for a warrior as fearless as Queek, the warlord could not bear such a monstrous sight, let alone face it, and instead called it quits and hastily left the battlefield, one of his more Skaven-y moments to be sure. The next part of his adventures will mostly be taken from the book Headtaker, so I will try not to spoil everything for you guys, but it will be a massive spoiler if you haven't read the book yet, so you might want to tune out if you don't want to hear about it. But like I said, it will not be a direct summary, but it's pretty close. So his next great achievement would be fought beneath Karak Azul, runic weapons were being shipped across the Karazhan core, and the council had tasked Lord Nodwell with taking care of the problem. To this end, he wanted Queek to lead an army to crush the dwarf things and stop the weapons from being distributed. Despite many emissaries sent by the council to give Queek these instructions, none of them ever seemed to return. I wonder why. And no one had been heard from the warlord in response to his summons. So, a grey seer named Razzle and a rat by the name of Sleek Sharpwit was sent to rein in the rebellious warlord by Lord Nodwell. They traveled all the way to the City of Pillars to find Queek, and he was little what they had expected. They had thought the rumors of bloodthirsty rat whom talks to his trophies was embellished, but knew after laying sight on him that this would be a much harder task than either of them had ever realized. Queek met with the silly grey seer in his dingy robes and decorated horns, and cared little of what he said. He spent most of the time inspecting the albino storm vermin sent to protect this emissary, and desired to test himself against them. Then the old thing began to talk. Sleep Sharpwit, an ancient for a rat man, was getting close to 20 years and hunched over and used crutches to keep himself upright. They wanted Queek to leave the City of Pillars to make war on Karak Azul for the council, but Queek declined, not seeing the reason to obey those so far away when there was plenty of slaughter to be had here immediately. Razzle was completely furious and quickly decided he would lead the force to take the Karak, and Queek would rue the day he defied the council. But Sleek knew that this plan would not work, and so decided to aid Queek instead by promising him the head of King Cazador of Karak Azul for his trophy rack. You can see a similar theme here. It's rather easy to get Queek motivated. Of course, the insane warlord agreed and decided to move with all haste, leaving the details of sending his army and that of the council to his right-hand man, Scott Bloodtail, as he usually does. Now, Grayseer Razzle decided to lay a trap for Queek, as the warlord decided to not only not wait for the reinforcements of his own army from Karak 8 Peaks, but decided to go ahead of his warriors through a tunnel that had collapsed by Razzle and made to prevent Queek from interfering with his plans to crush the Azul place without him. Queek was forced to remove his trophy rack and squeeze through a small hole in the rubble. Warriors from Clan Rictus were dispatched to take care of the Headtaker as he clambered out of the tunnel. Of course, the Headtaker would not die this day. Not only did he foil this plan, but slew the would-be assassins in an orgy of blood and gore. However, before he could finish off the last 2 or 3 traitors, one got the drop on Queek and would have killed him had Scott Bloodtail not appeared to take the poison knife in the chest. The mighty warrior went down, and Queek went into a rage, slaughtering the remainder of the Rictus warriors, and ran to their lair where his rage could be further vented by the death of his trusted comrade. Deadclaw was the Skaven hold below Karak Azul, and here Queek vented his rage and promptly took over the best lodgings in this dump, which were the warlock engineer Fisquix, the leader of this undercity and the one spearheading the attack on the Azul place before Queek's appearance. Of course, after meeting with the Headtaker, he took his leave and found different lodgings so that he would not be used to decorate the burrow Queek had decided needed more color, particularly Skaven blood and gore smeared across the walls and floor, mostly that of Clan Rictus, with a single survivor barely alive lying in the corner. Of course, Razzle, having heard Queek survived, made an appearance with Sleek Sharpwit to appease the warlord and convince him of no hard feelings, but this ultimately led to Queek nearly killing the Grey Seer, and through Sharpwit's silver tongue was he spared, and a plan put into place to take the Karak. You see, Sharpwit, through the use of clandestine spies led by an assassin named Fang Dao, that Cazador was offering, found out that Cazador, the king of Karak Azul, had a ransom for the return of his kin, whom were captured and being kept below Black Crag by a mighty Black Orc warlord named Gorfane Rockgut. He would give half the hold's gold to a dwarf responsible for the return, and a third to any human that did the same, which of course led to a mighty throng swelled with a regiment of human treasure hunters and dwarfs to be sent to undertake this great task. They simply had to wait for the dwarf army to leave, and then the hold would be easy to overrun. Queek despised this plan, as he would not get to fight many dwarf things, but the plan was already in motion before he could even get there, and so he snuck down to where the army was amassing. He spied a man-thing and caught its attention with the severed head of one of the albino storm vermin, and a message written in broken Queekish for the dwarfs that the Headtaker was coming for them all. This, of course, led to the dwarves canceling the expedition and preparing to defend off the massive, overwhelming Skaven force of their hold. This forced the Skaven into a very hasty battle led by Queek directly into the dwarf entrenched positions. It was a suicidal plan, and Sharpwit knew it. He begged Queek to allow him to give orders while he was in battle, but Queek did not trust the old thing, and instead held on to the leadership of this horde as they entered the fray. Now, the Skaven were not at full strength, as Queek still had not waited for his entire army to amass, instead had attacked with lesser numbers. Of course, they still outnumbered the dwarves 10-1, but charging their defenses was proving to be foolish. Hordes of Skaven were being butchered, but the morale held as Queek's trophy rack swayed across the battle line. The dwarfs, having easily distinguished this affront to their society, planned on removing the Thagaraki warlord from the Great Book of Grudges this day. However, a company of dwarf warriors held one of the flanks of the dwarven front line from Carrick 8 Peaks. Upon seeing their most hated enemy, these stout warriors decided to break ranks and charge the Headtaker. They didn't make it far, as they were quickly overrun and the dwarven line nearly collapsed. However, their king Cazador filled the gap with his personal bodyguard, and order was restored. It was then that Queek spied his prize, sitting high above the other dwarf things, and in an effort to catch him, charged the front line with his troops, only to be met by a cannon barrage that annihilated much of his units and what appeared to be Queek himself. Of course, the mighty Queek could not be killed by a mere cannon, and in fact his storm vermin had taken the bulk of the blast and merely knocked him down and piled their mangled corpses on top of his, hiding him from his army. At the sight of the warlord seemingly being killed, the Skaven army quickly began to disintegrate. It was at this time that Sleek finally took command of a group of Clan Eshin gutter runners and snuck behind the dwarven lines and silenced their artillery crews from damaging even more Skaven morale. Queek, once he came to his senses, resurfaced on the battlefield. However, one of his trophies was missing. His first and best skull, Black Tooth, was nothing but broken bone and dust at his feet. In a rage, Queek snagged a nearby warp fire thrower weapons team to clear a path to Cazador, the one who would fill his empty spike. The warp fire thrower's handlers chittered with glee and aimed the weapon up at the unsuspecting dwarfs and Skaven in their wake and pulled the trigger. However, no green flame erupted from the barrel, but instead the contents of the machine exploded, nearly killing Queek in the process. However, not giving up, a group of rattling gunners arrived, and even after leveling their weapons at the dwarfs and cranking the handles, nothing happened. Queek was completely furious at seeing the dwarfs rally and push the ratkin back. The Headtaker decided to retrieve his trophy another day. After relieving his frustrations on the obvious inferiority of his minions, as his first ever defeat, no, not a defeat. This doesn't count because it was not the one mighty Queek who was beaten, but his treacherous underlings. While slaying vast amounts of Tinkerrats in search of Fisquick, Ska Bloodtail appeared before the Headtaker, alive, without his armor, and apparently he was not dead at all, and once the old thing reappeared to reveal that he saved Ska for Queek, and asked but to give the Great Warlord a little advice on the next method of attack. Sleek secured a pact with one of the human mercenaries in the employ of the dwarf army, and utilizing him they would allow Cazador to do himself, by supplying his ransomed kin from Black Crag to the human to collect the enormous bounty from the hold. To Sharpwit's surprise, Queek actually agreed to this plan. But despite his assurance that the Eshin assassins could easily take care of this, Queek decided to take the half of his army that he had left behind in the City of Pillars to Black Crag and not only take the dwarf hostages, but teach Gorfane Rockgut a lesson, as he found out that after he left 8 Peaks, the Redfane tribe had been bolstering Skarsnik's ranks, taking back many war treasures from the Skaven. Of course, most of this was relayed by the talking heads of Queek's trophy rack, but those are minor details, and begrudgingly Sleek followed his warlord's lead. They traveled over the surface as the head of Krug, a dwarf named Thane, warned Queek that the tunnels the Great Seer Razzle had suggested were in fact traps to kill Greenskin and Thagaraki alike. This was his first trip above ground, and he found it lacking and disappointing, especially at how it made his fellow ratmen cower in the open space. After many miles of wandering around aimlessly, they eventually found Black Crag, who knows how, and were met by a mighty greenskin Wah. It was here that Sleek suggested a pincer attack on the greenskins, where one force would charge the front line, while a second army would come in from the flank. Of course, in an attempt to remove the deranged rat Queek once and for all, suggested that the Headtaker lead the primary force so that he could obtain all the glory. Though by some bizarre inspiration of cunning, the warlord opted to lead the flanking force and instead nominated the Gracier Razzle to head the army. Before the battle, it is discovered that the warlock engineer Fistquick has been making a doom will, and he tells Ska to make sure that this upstart rival meets a grisly end, as well as the accompanying Razzle. He said you shall follow Razzle into battle and make sure that if he does in fact survive, to take the Gracier's head. He then informs Sleek, the old treacherous thing, to stay in the tower and command the army from above, to which Sleek very much obliged. The battle was enormous, as the numbers of the Skaven and the Greenskins were in the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. The primary force, led by Razzle, met the Greenskins in a massive charge, and at first the Skaven were winning, as the appearance of Queek's flanking force began to slowly turn the tide. However, a massive giant from the Greenskins charged through their ranks and made a beeline towards the Grey Skier and Ska. He raised his massive club, and the Skaven morale was visibly dropping at this point, but something unexpected happened. The warlock Fistquick, in his doom will, destroying the Greenskins and Skaven alike, was running over everything in his path when he finally saw the perfect target to unleash the true potential and glory of his miraculous machine, the mighty greenskin giant. He lined up his shot and pressed the button to fire the main cannons, but nothing happened. And then, the machine exploded in a magnificent warpstone cloud, the impact so great that it did in fact kill the giant and even send Queek flying through the air on the other side of the battlefield, essentially decimating both the Greenskin and Skaven force. Queek smiled to himself that the warlock was most assuredly dead, as well as Razzle, as the explosion was close to where he last saw him. Unfortunately, Ska was more than likely dead as well, but at least his rivals were gone. And then Queek snickered about the fate waiting for the old thing in the tower. Sleek saw everything unfold, and he felt someone approaching him from behind. He turned to find Feng Dao, the Eshin assassin he commanded while at the Battle of Karakazul. But he felt something different coming off the assassin. He realized nearly too late that what was happening, as the assassin lunged towards the old rat with an outstretched blade. The assassin, seeing this ancient Skaven as nearly no threat, didn't put his full heart into the first blow, which he would soon regret. It is then revealed that Sleek is not as feeble as he does seem. He crunches down on a false tooth made of warpstone, and the substance rejuvenates him with the vigor of his youth. However, all he has are his crutches to fend off the assassin, and he does, until one of them is lost during the fight. The assassin, not wanting to take any more chances underestimating his prey, begins to decide to batter the last crutch from Sleek's grip before finishing him off once and for all. The fact that he managed to last this long against an assassin, a Clan Eshin assassin, shows how skilled this old rat was in his youth. However, as chunks of the crutch are cleaved away, an odd aura begins to shine through. Sleek then smacks the crutch against the wall of the tower, and the wood falls away to reveal a dwarven sword of immense power. At the sight of the sword, Feng Dao realizes that he might in fact be killed by this old thing, and just like every good Skaven, cowers in the corner and begs for mercy and agrees to do whatever Sleek wants to do. Sleek then orders Feng Dao to go find Razzle, and that they were going with the original plan of capturing the dwarven hostages of Rotgut and getting out of here before Queek could do anything about it. It is then revealed that Sleek was no ordinary advisor to Lord Nodwell. He was in fact the previous warlord responsible for taking the City of Pillars before Queek was even born. The old rat makes his way down in the Black Crag at the rendezvous point they agreed upon, and Feng Dao brings Razzle. But unlikely, Scott Bloodtail is also there, and Sleek realizes what must be going on. He gives a speech to Razzle about his betrayal of Sleek and asks him where the human was that they needed to complete the plan, and Razzle admits that he lost track of him. So, Sleek looks to Ska and tells him to do that thing that Queek asked him to do now. Ska kills the albino storm vermin of Razzle and begins to choke the disgracier to death. But Sleek convinces him to let him go and simply break his legs instead and leave him to die in Black Crag. It is then that they come across a bridge battle between greenskins and dwarfs, and they hide away and watch things unfold. From this vantage point, they see the hostages that they need, as well as the human that they need, being captured. And this is when the mighty Queek arrives and engages in the battle with the sizable remnants of his army. And a regiment of dwarfs led by slayers come to aid their kin and prevent the Skaven from completing their plan. It is here that the warlord engaged the leader of the dwarfs, a mighty slayer named Handrick Hammerhand, in single combat and in fact bests the slayer. But before he can land a killing blow, Skad Bloodtail comes flying into Queek from the direction behind the greenskin line, saving the slayer in the process. The Headtaker, eager to see what could do this to his second-in-command, completely forgets about the head he was about to take and charges into the greenskin line to hear the war cry of Wah Gorfang. The Black Orc war boss is massive, so massive that for a weapon he wields a dwarven statue's leg as a club with ease. Upon seeing Queek, he bellows a challenge, and of course the Headtaker has to meet it. He dodges a massive blow from Gorfang and ducks between the orc's legs and drives Dwarf Gouger to the hilt in the groin of the war boss. To this, the orc chuckles. I have the thickest armor around, Ratty. It will take more than that to hurt me. Fine, fine, big meat, Queek responds and began dancing around the swings of Gorfang, delivering strikes with Dwarf Gouger. But he literally could not penetrate the armor deep enough to do any real damage to the orc. Eventually, Rotgut manages to backhand Queek, sending him flying back into his own storm vermin, crushing them. And Queek, exasperated, manages to stand, but was pushed aside again by a dwarven prince, who immediately charges the orc war boss in an epic duel. During this battle, Sleek used Fang Dao to secure the human and dwarf he needed to complete his plan, but they needed help carrying them, and so they picked up Ska off the floor and had him tote the prisoners. Queek saw them as they picked himself up once again, and with a blanket of rage washing over him at their treachery, he quickly set after them, completely forgetting about his previous fights. Of course, Fang Dao, being the trustworthy Skaven he is, draws his dagger and is about to square off with the weakening Sleek. Of course, Sharpwit isn't surprised by this, and in fact is ready for it, except suddenly, a look of shock spreads across the assassin's face, and the tip of a blade explodes from his chest. Queek kicks the assassin off his sword and licks the blood off his blade. Traitor meat has the sweetest taste, and old thing's blood will be the sweetest. At this point, Ska realizes he has not in fact been serving Queek at all, his best interests in mind, and grovels at the warlord's feet. It's fine, Ska, you didn't know any better. In an act of uncommon forgiveness, Queek allows Ska to live, but Sleek, losing his temper, eats the remainder of his warpstone and engages the Headtaker in combat. You are a mad thing, fool, and you are incompetent, and I betrayed you for the good of all Skavendom. Queek charged the old thing, and he actually was shocked to find out that he did not immediately overwhelm the rat. It was then that Sleek could hear the Headtaker snickering. He was enjoying this fight, and Sleek begins to spout that he was twice the warlord Queek would ever be. To this, Queek stated that he didn't care, as he was stupid to challenge the Headtaker, and that is all that mattered. The fight drew on for quite some time, until finally Queek managed to lop off Sleek's hand that was holding his magical sword. As he was bleeding out, Sleek states that he only wanted to be remembered. To this, Queek leans in close to Sleek and says, "Queek will always remember you," and removes Sharpwit's head and places it on the vacant spike Blacktooth left, completing his trophy rack where he still sits to this day. After this, Queek sees the army of Karak Azul engage the greenskins of Black Crag and knows that they will no longer be able to provide weapons for the rest of the Empire, and that the will of the Council has been done in the process. He then returns to the City of Pillars, from where he rules to this day. Queek, being a mighty Skaven warlord, has access to some rather powerful equipment, the first being the mighty Dwarf Gouger we've heard so much about, which Queek wields this magical maul, named Dwarf Gouger, an ancient weapon forged during the time of the Goblin Wars. The war maul is so powerful that few forms of armor are able to deflect its penetrating blow. as well as his warp shard armor, which we also mentioned earlier as well. Queek usually goes to war with a suit of spiked plates encrusted with shards of pure warp stone, protecting Queek from harm while also harming those trying to harm him. Which can be seen as, if you engage Queek in combat, the dust actually begins to waft off of his armor, and anything besides a Skaven is highly influenced by Warpstone, especially since it is the raw stuff of chaos, and often this will kill his enemies quicker than he can occasionally. Now, I will not be going into the end times, just because, well, as many of you should know by now, it's not a very friendly topic for most people. Eventually someday I might, and he does have a okay part to play in the end times. I don't quite like the way that they ended his story, but that's besides the point. Now, also, as most of you should know, we are getting Queek as we have, in fact, Queek as a legendary lord for the Skaven in Total War Warhammer, leading clan Moors into battle. He gets the benefit of Storm Vermin being exceptionally cheap, which are very decent units, as well as a very decent morale and attack buff for his army. He has access to both his Warp Shard armor and Dwarf Gouger as his legendary gear, and of course he is one of the best lords and hero duelists in the game. He's excellent at one-on-one combat, and I found him to be decent at taking down the larger single entity units, such as Bastiladons, let alone his effectiveness when engaging heroes and lords. With that is going to be that. That is the end of the video for the infamous Headtaker, the mighty warlord Queek. As always, I would like to say a thank you for all of your support in these lore videos. It really does mean a lot to me, and I'd like to thank all of my new subscribers and my returning subscribers. You guys keep me going, and I've had more lore planned in the near future. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, as it really does help out our channel, especially for such a small one that we have going right now. Now, if you do have questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and I will answer them as best I can, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. And with that, I have been Jumbo Thick, guys. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.